grab a friend. Hit the gas and hold your breath.
The name's Bond. Jace Bond? James Bond?
Who are you?
My name's Bond.
James Bond. Bond. James Bond. Bond. James Bond.
The original action-adventure hero, James Bond.
I love you, Denise Richards. I love you, Christmas Jones. Dr. Christmas Jones. The world is not enough. Boom, 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 boom. A nuclear physicist who helps James Bond, Pierce Brosnan, in his pursuit of the villainous Reynard, Robert Carlyle. Why is she so offensive? Aside from being routinely voted the worst Bond girl of all time, bullshit, Christmas is just an insult to the audience. That the filmmakers honestly believed viewers would buy the lovely Denise Richards as a scientist, all the more so when she spends almost the whole movie wearing skimpy figure-hugging clothing, so offensive in of itself. Listen, if Dr. Christmas Jones knocked on my door in this outfit, believe you and me, I would take her very seriously. Jane Bond? We haven't got there yet because Phoebe Waller-Bridge will probably be fired at that point from doing any more damage to beloved IPs. Who could forget Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Indiana Jones Mark II? It's me!
Eat lightning and shit thunder. With Jason King on Kung Fu Hot Dog.
Who are you? You are number 6. I am not a number. I am a free man.
And somebody else who is a nice guy is this gentleman right here, Bond. James Bond. But unfortunately, Bond is going to be more of a moral tale thanks to Charlie Higson. You know him from The Fast Show. It's disappointing that while Higson has written the young Bond novels, the latest one on His Majesty's Secret Service, it's going to be a tale about white men who oppose wokeness. Because God knows when somebody like me with their dark coffee skin steps out into that sea of whiteness, that I can just get away with opposing the woke stuff and I'll get lambasted for any other opinion that I have. So in the synopsis, it's the 4th of May, may the 4th be with you, 2 days before the coronation of King Charles III, and the world's favorite spy has his work cut out for him, because when does Bond never have his work cut out for him, right? It continues. Bond is sent at the last minute, usual path of the course, to thwart an attempt to disrupt the coronation by the wealthy, eccentric, and self-styled Athelstan of Wessex, who is on a deadly mission of his own to teach the United Kingdom a lesson, damn it! Can James Bond dismantle his shady plans and defeat his privately hired team of mercenaries? I tell you, when you go into this article, it gets a lot more cringe. The excerpt shared by Leo Curse is part of Bond infiltrating Athelstan's organization, and more specifically, his Anglo-Saxon castle. In order to do so, he poses as Peter Sanborn, the leader of a group of 30 mercenaries. Curse's excerpt sees Bond observing a number of guests who have been invited to Athelstan's castle. It specifically describes a man named Roger Burkett. Burkett was an ex-Tory MP, famous for promoting COVID, vaccines, mask wearing, 5G conspiracy theories, and the cover-up of Cyril Smith. And already you can see where this is going. And actually, no, I'm not here defending Tory MPs or any other kind of MP, because a lot of them are scumbags anyway, which had spilled over into the usual anti-immigrant, anti-EU, anti-BBC, anti-MSM, anti-cultural Marxists. And what's wrong with that? Climate change denial pronouncements. It sounds like Charlie Higson is describing his own political machinations right here. I'm kind of getting that feel, because when does a writer ever not take him or herself out of the narrative, the fictional narrative that they're proposing to their reader? Oh no. It was an anti-trans diatribe that had eventually got him kicked out to the party, and he'd soon set up the New Freedom Party. Sounds a bit like Nigel Farage. This is a very political article. This is meant to be James Bond, world-renowned spy, respected by his enemies, loved by women.
She's just coming, sir.
I think he's attempting re-entry, sir.
But for some reason, this James Bond is trying to echo a real-life Bond. Listen, I've actually been to a couple of spy buildings around the Vauxhall area, if you know what I mean. I was a visitor to one of those places, not illegally, and I can tell you, the world of espionage, everything else is boring. It is absolutely boring. So if Charlie Higson is trying to present some grounded reality in a fictional spy created by Ian Fleming all those decades ago, it's not going to work. You're not going to interest anybody whatsoever. I do fear that Barbara Broccoli might look at this and may use it as a stepping stone for the new Bond franchise going forward, whenever that goes forward. It continues. Bond was struck by something, probably my huge penis. It was a long while since he'd been at any kind of function that was almost exclusively full of men. It felt strange. There was not even a pretense at diversity here. Because if you're storming an Anglo-Saxon castle that has its main team of white men, that kind of makes a bit of sense. And listen, as a kid growing up, I was fascinated by the Anglo-Saxon castles I saw on TV documentaries and in books I read. But I never sat there thinking, I shouldn't learn that, or I shouldn't be part of it. Of course I wanted to learn about it, because that sort of things fascinated me. Did I watch Excalibur and think to myself, there's a sea of white people here. I don't think I can actually tolerate this any longer. Wrong. Athelstan hadn't been the least bit concerned about ensuring that half the people he'd hired to carry out his coup should be women, or non-white, or disabled. Well, here's the problem. If you're going to make sure that your team are including those people, especially non-white folks, you know, Mr. Dark Coffee representation himself, you might have a problem with that, because the running joke in 80s action films, how soon is the black guy or the guy of color going to be killed off the screen? Do you know what I mean? So it might bring back those kind of vibes again. Not that I have a problem with it, but it's so strange that would be written in a novel by Charlie Higson. It's so bizarre. In Athelstan's world, he was king and could do whatever he wanted. So he's a white male, rich and insufferable. Great, thanks. Believe it or not, this excerpt I just read is not the most egregious part of the book. As Bond arrives for the party, Higson goes on to say he wanted to blend in, not draw attention to himself. He was Peter Sanborn, someone who was serious about his job. He just hoped to God that everyone else wasn't going to be wearing cloaks and hoods and jingling about in chain mail. Upon entering the main room, Bond observes many of the men in that room could be described as ex-something, ex-military, ex-politician, ex-media pundit for hire. They'd become more and more extreme in their views and far too toxic, unruly, and unsafe to remain affiliated with the radical groups they had joined. When you become too far out for a far-right organization, you knew you were really on the outside. In other words, excluded from the fellowship. I think that's what it actually means. And look, this is the cover for an Ian Fleming James Bond book back in the day. I don't have to really go on to explain why this cover is so awesome and what it represents about James Bond. And in fact, if we go to... Look at that. How good is that for a cover? That's just awesome. Tells you everything you need to know. Bond is conventionally handsome. Oh, you have a a woman of diversity who's tied up. But there's been worse depictions of diverse women in some of the Bond films. Anna Diarmas, who could forget her? But look at this, ladies and gentlemen, to update these... I mean, this is like a sequel, isn't it? On His Majesty's Secret Service, because 1969 we had the On Her Majesty's Secret Service with George Lazenby and Diana Rigg. But look at that, plain, boring, Tory blue colour against the gold font, so you can read into that as you will. But on that one, folks, before I sign off, I just wanted to give a shout out to independent creators out there, because as we know right now, the whole world of entertainment is going through some really kind of weird ESG nonsense and especially Western entertainment. I'm not talking about Japan or South Korea or China, because their entertainment, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to video games and comics, is incredible. But if you're an independent creator and you want to get something out there because at the moment you feel that it doesn't get the coverage that it deserves, drop me a line, send me a DM on Twitter at the same channel handle that this YouTube channel has. I'll look into your stuff if I think it's worth promoting, whether it's an indie video game, if it's a comic book, if it's a book, and you give me a bit of a brief synopsis about it. If I think there's some potential there, give us a shout, and I can't wait to see what goods you bring to my table. So ladies and gentlemen, if you were me, and perhaps if I were you, you better come back for the next video, shaken but not stirred.
You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Don't let your dreams be dreams. Dream of me. I'll make your dreams come true. Everything's possible with me.